Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Stratford Live TV with Joe Draper
and Edward Lowe. We've got a great fun-packed episode again today. We'll be out meeting Cos from Veeno of Belcourt, so that's a really great tasty episode, isn't it? We had great fun there.
Yeah, a little bit too much drinking.
A little bit too tasty. So we did have lots of fun. Ed will be talking in a stat chat this time about not Brexit, so that's a nice change, but he will be talking about influences that come into play that will make house prices fluctuate, so stay tuned for that. Another great buy-to-let we're waiting for. Indeed. And we will also have a slightly different tip this time, so it's going to be a home extension tip. So that's something that is a little bit different to normal, something to look forward to. As normal, we'll have our event, so it'll be my favourite event of the month. Ed doesn't even know what it is yet, but it will be something you like. We are now halfway through the year, so to me, this is quite an important marker. Because now we're on the home straight to...
Oh, God.
He knows. So I know we're not mentioning the C word, but it is the home straight for Christmas.
It can't be.
And when
you're like one of these people that go, oh, do you know, it's that time of year where the
nights
show
will just be events when we're on the home straight for Christmas. Yeah,
but your event
is just events.
What, so between June and basically December you're just going to talk about Christmas?
I might start in September. Episode 6.
The thing is, I love Christmas. I do love Christmas, but it started to move from like December to November to like October to now, and it's just like by the time you get there, it's like you're just like, oh, I'm a bit sort of been there, done it. By the time
you get there, you just need more practice.
No, I love it. I absolutely love Christmas, all the kids and stuff. It's brilliant, but I do feel it's just kind of it's like they start putting Christmas stuff in I think it was October. I'm sure it was October. You don't even get past bonfire night now, and then they basically...
I'm not listening.
Yeah, I know. I'm not preaching to the converted here, am I? Anyway.
Let's crack on with episode 6. Hi Cos, great to see you. Thank you so much for sparing some time today. I know you've got quite a busy schedule getting ready for things tonight, but it's lovely for you to be able to share the business with us and really tell us about what's special with Veeno. First of all, what I'd like to ask is, what is it about Stratford that you really love? What makes Stratford Stratford?
Sure thing. No, thank you for choosing us. It's such a pleasure, and I don't know, it felt really nice to be appreciated and something bringing to you and being part and choosing it feels appreciated, and it's really lovely. In terms of the Stratford is beautiful. Stratford is beautiful. Myself, when I came from Italy here, and when I met Stratford for the first time, it was like love at the first impact, and it was beautiful.
It is quite unique, isn't it? You've got the river setting. You've got a lot of visitors as well.
Yeah, and even if it's such a lovely and small town in the end, have a lot of potential, and this is what I loved about it, and I still love it. It's amazing.
You think in terms of the place, it's sort of very indicative with the people that make up the place as well, isn't it? So for me, there's a lot of variance within Stratford, so lots of different types of people. Is that something that you find as well?
Yes, of course we do. Obviously, being really nice town where we have a lot of tourists around, and they do come from all over the world.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
It is beautiful because bring new culture in, they coming to find us in terms of English culture, and why not Italian? And it is beautiful. And at the same time, we do have our guests here coming regularly, and it makes
so you've got
really
sort
nice
of two strands, really, haven't you? You've got sort of more transient visitors, but then you've got people that will come sort of every week to see you and come to lots of events and things like that. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the business, what would you say in terms of Veeno? What makes it unique to some of the other, perhaps, restaurants or bars that you've got in the local area?
In terms of Veeno, Veeno just by himself, only maybe even starting with the name, it's really, really unique. Veeno, it's something extremely different. That was the reason, but I didn't think two times when did manage to get the job offer,
Okay.
and it is beautiful. It's beautiful because, as a fact, we are not a restaurant, so we will never do starters, mains, and
So
other
there isn't
things.
that firm sort of structure.
No. We are just a wine bar. Not just, it's amazing. We are a wine bar, and what we do, we just do our wines. Most of them, they just come from our vineyard in Sicily. We
Okay.
produce them, and we're selling them, being really, really
So there
proud.
will be wines here that we probably wouldn't be able to get anywhere else in town. Is that right? Or
The wines that we have here, they're coming from Caruso e Menini vineyard in Sicily.
Okay.
And they are just amazing. Especially these wines in this type of labels, no way you'll be able to find them anywhere else in England.
Okay.
Obviously, we have other vineyards all around the country, but no. And
Okay.
That makes us.
so
especially
in
unique.
terms of the food that you serve as well, does that also, is that imported as well, or?
Yes, of course. All the food what we have comes from Italy. Obviously, not the vegetables or anything, because that would be a little bit hard.
Yeah.
We're just using our local suppliers, and we try to get them nice and fresh all the time.
Sure.
But in terms of our meats, cheeses, bruschettas, wherever we do, they do come from Italy, and it's nice. Even the pizza, we
Okay.
just started recently to make the pizza. As I know, we used to lose some of our guests because we couldn't give that support.
Pizza is a favourite, isn't
Yeah,
it?
so we were lucky enough to find this company in Italy, and they produce for us the pizzas. We
Okay.
order them 1 week in advance. They make all the bases and everything. We keep them.
So
fresh
it's a
in the
very
fridge.
authentic experience
It's really
then.
authentic. It's really
Yeah.
authentic because they're using the Italian water, Italian flour, and everything, and we bring them here. We just put them in a nice stone oven, and it's good. It's a
So it's
lovely pizza.
the ingredients and the process
Sure.
that work together to create the whole
Yeah.
in terms of that authentic experience.
The pizzas obviously is nice, fresh, wherever. We're using our fresh ingredients.
Okay.
In 3 minutes time, you can have with all the modesty, the best pizza in Stratford.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of competition out there. Some
I know.
people are going to rev up their game for that.
I'm brave enough to consider what I said.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I mean, in terms of events that you have going on through the week,
Sure.
what kind of things do you have on offer that perhaps people should know about?
Of course, in terms of our offers and everything, was something what we choose to do to give something back to our guests. And what we had recently and what we did, we do have an happy hour.
Okay.
That one starts from Sunday till Thursday. And with the happy hour, it's just having them here, coming from 6 until 8, and they can just have a lot of our wines. They can
Yeah.
have a lot of cocktails, a lot of selected products.
Okay.
What they will pay only one, and they can get two of them.
Gosh, okay. So that must be popular.
Yes, it became really, really popular. We used to do it only Sunday till Wednesday, but it became that popular. We extended only on Thursdays
Brilliant.
as well.
Excellent.
And also on Thursday, what we did in the past, after that, with the winter time, was a little bit slow, and we kind of forgot
Yeah,
about
things
it.
do quieten down in the town a little bit
Yeah.
over the winter, don't they?
But we did manage to bring back our aperitivo.
Okay.
What is that and what that includes and everything? Actually, it's a really nice Italian culture, and with aperitivo time, it's actually what we are and what we do. And on Thursdays, for example, if everybody is more than welcome to come to see us, they can, to have to try our wines.
Do you
our
need to book for
cocktails.
that, or can you just arrive?
Will be better, because if we know
Could
our
sort of
bookings, we know how much food to
anticipate,
prepare
yeah.
and everything, but a booking is not required. So with that, you're more than welcome to come here. You can have a glass of wine, cocktail, whatever you like, and we prepare a really, really nice buffet
Okay.
with a lot of our products. So you'll have a lot of bruschettas, you'll have some meat, some cheeses, some pizzas maybe, and they're nice, all for free.
So
on
you've
us.
got a real balance there, haven't you? So
We try to.
yeah,
We
no,
always
that's
try to
great.
think. It-
And the room that we're in at the
Sure.
moment, is this sort of for the? Do you do wine tasting here? Or?
Yes, of course. And in terms of our wine tastings, we like to think that we are unique and we do something different. As most of the places, when they do wine tasting, they just maybe do once a week, or maybe
Yeah.
they just organize for big groups.
Yeah.
Here we do wine tasting for one person, and we did wine tasting for 50 people. So you don't have a specific day where to book or wherever. You just let
Because
us
some
know.
people
and
get
we
more
can-
from an experience when it's more of a singular, and some people prefer it as a group because they want to sort
Sure
of
thing.
bounce off other people. So that's great that you're not stuck to the same routine with things. Absolutely.
And it's nice. It's nice
Yeah.
because it's something different. Something like 2 hours to spend with us,
Yeah.
and it's a different.
So it's quite detailed.
Yes, of course. It's just they will know about us, we will know
Yeah.
about them, we will socialize, we spend some time together, and we just will have a little bit of fun.
Great, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say is that for people to want to know a little bit more about the business, you've got a Facebook page and
indeed.
you've also got an Instagram page. So those will be on the links, so people can look at that and they'll also get updates about any offers. So
Sure.
thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you taking part in the
It's been
show.
a pleasure. Chin chin.
Chin chin.
So great interview with Cos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we had a great time. You
Yeah.
know, he told us about lots of different strands of the business that perhaps we didn't know about, which,
Yeah.
you know, is always informative.
Had a great time. Had a couple of drinks,
Had a
which
few
probably
drinks.
wasn't too good in the middle of the day, to be honest. I felt the effects of it, and I learned something as well. I thought, probably it's going to be slightly embarrassing, as you know, because you were there. I thought an espresso martini had coffee and martini, but I was quite correctly
You were corrected quite swiftly.
quickly. Yes,
Yes.
it's because in the martini glass.
Yes.
which isn't quite.
But you won't forget that now because you did drink one.
Well, I
quite,
thought I better have
again quite swiftly.
yeah, I better had drink
You
it just to
liked
make
it.
sure there wasn't any martini in it. I can confirm there was no martini in it.
None lurking at the bottom.
No,
No.
just an empty glass.
No. Yeah, so we had a great time. Obviously, do check out their Facebook page and Instagram because they've got lots of events going on. We will also be launching
that?
a competition as well.
Got some water.
Probably could do with some actually. It's just the thought of all these
It's all that
cocktails.
alcohol, isn't it? It's making you.
Psychosomatic.
You're drying out. You see, that's the problem. It's probably what 12 o'clock now.
Excuse
You-
me, yeah,
Sorry,
Ed.
yes. You know what I'd cut by now.
Don't. Shh.
Well, you've dried out now, haven't you, because your hives?
Oh
I
yeah.
have. They're gone. Look, I'm even donning a short
Celebrating
sleeve.
with a short
I know the
sleeve
old guns
shirt.
are out.
Yeah.
Just to show it
We'll
all.
be checking on that at the end of the episode, in case any stress has incurred a kind of second visit.
Work of you two, they'll be right back. Don't worry about that.
Blame Jack.
Yeah. He hasn't had any sleep, has he? Bless him. So he's a bit temperamental
Everybody's
today.
on the back footer.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be moving on to Stat Chat.
In this episode, Stat Chat, I'm going to be looking at how unemployment affects the local housing market, which probably sounds really obvious, but actually it's really interesting to see the absolute correlation between the two in actual numbers. So if you've been following sort of my Stat Chats, you'll know that the B word is massively overused, unfortunately, but it is just a topic to discuss and invariably is having an impact at the moment. So but it's really good in this instance to see, well, what else does actually affect the property market? And obviously unemployment, quite obviously, is one of those. The reality is, I mean, I think on the demand side of things, you've always got a number of key elements that you have to look into. So you've got wages, job security, interest rates, the availability of actually getting the mortgage in the first place, the confidence in the economy, inflation, speculative demand. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. But what I wanted to do in this really is just to delve a little bit deep into the numbers and actually see what that correlation is between unemployment and property prices. But in this particular instance, sold transactions, because that really is the sort of true health. Because I think if you just look at it on house prices alone, there are some flaws to doing it that way. A lot of commentators and economists prefer to do it on transaction numbers rather than property prices because it can be a bit one-dimensional. And the reason for that really is twofold, which is what we've basically said, that if you just do it purely on property prices, the reality is people who then look to buy, they go on to then sell. You've got the drop and the relationship between the adjustment of price coming up, coming down. So it can be quite one-dimensional looking at it just on that. I think the other thing as well, the twofold bit, the property when you move, it's a very emotive buy. When you actually look at the logic of buying houses, it's one of the most illogical decisions you're ever going to make because of the speed you make that decision versus the amount of money you're spending. And you never have, there's no other investment vehicle that you would buy like stocks and shares and gold or anything like that that would get that emotion going the same as a property would. Because I think the thing about property is when people tend to move, it's showing that they're moving forward with their lives, they're getting on with it, and that is a great indicator in what the property market is doing and more importantly the health of it. So what we've done here is we've grabbed the council figures and we've related obviously the property transactions to unemployment, and it's an inverse curve. And so what's really interesting, of course, is that when unemployment is low, quite obviously house transactions are high, and conversely the other route is true. When unemployment is high, transactions drop off. So just if you can't see it, the orange line is the property sold, the blue line is unemployment. When you drill that down in a bit more detail, so you can see this particular segment, this is basically the credit crunch when unemployment obviously was high. So you can see here 2.5, 2.1 is the lowest in actual fact, and then the highest being 4.4. And you can see, so if we take that as a good example, in 2015, 2.1, very low unemployment, very high transaction levels, 2,425. Yet when unemployment was obviously very high at 4.4%, transaction levels dropped off to 1,670. So the trend in those and what that works as a percentage is basically they dropped off at 44.34%, whilst unemployment in Stratford rose by 41.8% during 2007 to 2009, which is basically what we deem as the global financial crash. So it goes without saying that there is very much a direct correlation between unemployment and obviously house transactions, which I guess may not have come completely obvious to everybody, but it's very interesting nonetheless. Now, I think the thing to say that it's not saying that unemployment is the only factor when it comes to the effect it has on house prices, but quite clearly it's a strong link. I think when you look at a broader view and you then start looking at the UK as a whole, because we're quite lucky and fortunate in the area that we live in, Stratford, that unemployment has always been relatively low. But when you go into some of the bigger cities, it goes without saying that the bounce back has taken longer, where you often see unemployment at a higher level. So in some of the cities that you've got where unemployment has never really shifted, the transaction levels have all stayed the same or certainly low, and conversely where unemployment is low, then obviously transaction levels increase. So it can see that it is very much linked. I think one of the things as well which is really interesting, and I know this is going to sound a little bit ironic given what I'm talking about, but we do seem to fall into this pattern as a country where we are increasingly obsessed with house prices, basically, and what's going on. And I think that I've been in the industry now over 20 years, and I think when I first got into the industry, there wasn't as much data around, to be fair, to call upon, so not everyone could sort of analyse the house prices as closely. But I do believe the tipping point has gone the other way now, where we're probably overly obsessed, and I think we've forgotten the true reason of why you buy a house in the first place, because it is, after all, a home and not a house. And there are areas of the place where they are, you know, a man's home is castle. You shut the door, you lock the world away. It's your own sort of domain and haven, and I think that's where you create memories and cherish things like Christmas and birthdays and family events and all those sort of good things, really. And I think that really should supersede it. So I think that we should probably, in fairness, stop fretting too much about house prices, because if you remember one of the previous stat chats, the average life cycle of people living in a property now is over 20 years. So the reality is, when you're looking at these stats, they're all in very small segments of time, and that doesn't reflect the reality, which is that people live in properties for a very long time. So you shouldn't really be worrying too much about it, and just get on with enjoying your home.
That was a great stat chat today. I think it was really interesting to see how so many different social factors come into play, and also maybe how, as a culture, maybe in England, we are kind of focused on the price point and how that's then going to sort of reap benefits in the future, rather than just looking at a home that, yeah, you can create memories, you can cherish, and of course is something that you need.
Yeah, you just stole everything I was about to say. This is very true. I don't use it just to repeat it. But yeah, I think we are probably overly obsessed in this country about the house price, which I know is slightly ironic because obviously all I was talking about in that stat chat was house prices. But I think that
No, but you're a good example of that.
Yeah, I just think the cultural change has gone a bit too far. It's imbalance now, that there's so much focus on looking at prices and rather than just actually realising why you live in a house in the first place, which is, as you said, to create memories, Christmas, your lovely C word that you enjoy so much.
I suppose though, because we have more information at our fingertips now than we've ever had, then when people have more information, therefore they can form more of an opinion on things, and therefore that makes people a bit hungry to sort of really get to grips with things, and then that becomes a thing in itself. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. I think that it's just one of those things that, because it's reported now so much in the media as well, there's just so much. It's just such a headline grabbing tool that it's now used to sell.
When there isn't anything else going on, that will always be the interjection.
Yeah, basically. But I still don't. I remember when I got into industry about 20 odd years ago, and back then it was very different. And you're right, there wasn't so much exposed to the level of detail and data that you can get in house prices, but very much it was people buying it because they loved it, which still happens, to be fair, because if you think about buying a house, it's probably the most illogical decisions you're ever going to take, because essentially you could be in a house with probably 30 seconds and you know you're going to buy it.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing else in life. You'd research looking at a new television longer than
For
that.
a lot longer.
You need your clothes and dresses and Christmas presents or whatever. But the thing is, it still is an emotive buy.
Yes.
It's probably the most powerful
Very much
one.
so.
So that does still exist, but I think the aftermath of that is then there's a bit too much of an obsession around it. But it's partly because people use it as their pension. So it kind of inevitably does fall that way because it's people's futures that they're then trying to firm up to make sure that they've got enough to retire on.
And trying to see into the future a little bit, isn't it? So I suppose that's then that tally, and that's why it sort of moves in the same direction.
In the flux capacitor. Warwickshire landlords, I am out and about again hunting down the very best deals, but this time it's a beautiful summer's day, not getting rained on like last time. So where am I? Well, I'm in the pretty town of Ulster, and behind me is a property on Devonish Close. So the property is a 2-bedroomed, got a really nice hardwood floor actually to the living room, modern kitchen, modern bathroom, so 2 decent bedrooms upstairs, nice garden and 2 parking spaces. It is a freehold property as we understand. It's currently on the market for offers in excess of 160,000. It should rent out for £700 a calendar month, which will give you a yield of 5.25%, which is good going. So why do I like it? Well, you've got a couple of amenities fairly close by. You're also within a very close distance of 3 good schools, and it's in a really nice little quiet cul-de-sac. These properties typically always rent very, very well, so I'd recommend you give Jeremy and co a call, get in, have a chat with them, see what you think.
Great to see you in another location for this week's Buy to Let deal.
Yeah, it's always good to get out and about in different areas of the county, so it's nice. It actually shows also that it doesn't matter where you are within our region, there's always deals to be had. Just a quick one to say thank you very much for everyone who got in touch following the stat chat on the recent tenant fee ban, which came in obviously in the beginning of June. Good to have those questions, thanks for that. If you have any questions you like answering, then please feel free to get in touch and we can have a discussion.
Now we're going to move into this week's home extension tip.
Indeed. In this episode, we decided to move away from home styling tips for a change and concentrate on home extension tips. Why did we do that? Well, in May this year, there was some change around the regulation of permitted development. Well, what is permitted development? Essentially, permitted development is the ability for you to extend your property without the need of going through the formal planning application process, therefore saving you some time and money. So in 2013, the rules changed. The government extended how far you could go out, and what they did in May this year is make those rules permanent, which is great. This obviously only applies still to single story extensions. What they also did is they coincided with the permanency of the deal. They also said that you had to now do a neighbourhood consultation scheme, which I'll come through in a bit more detail later. So some key facts around it. The permitted development is still only for extensions that go out to the rear, so that's really important, and single story. So you can go out on a detached property as far as 8 metres, which is quite a lot of space in anyone's book, and then for all of the properties, houses, this is not apartments obviously, 6 metres. So again, it's still quite a lot. As I said before, it is only to the rear. You can't go out to the side or to the front. You have to still go through the normal planning procedures to get to those extensions, but to the back, you're absolutely fine. The maximum height can only be 4 metres, and you can extend no more than 50% of the original house. So this is quite important. So if you bought a house that has had an extension previously, you have to factor that in. It's not as when you bought it 50%, it's when the house was originally constructed. So that is where they deem that 50% to come from. Other key facts, as I say, the neighbour consultation is a big one, which is so important when you come to planning. You really do need to get your neighbours on side about, which again I will run through in a bit more detail right at the end, but it's well worth waiting out for that tip because it's absolutely crucial. You also still have to go through what they call a prior approval application, but it's nowhere near as laborious as it used to be. They've made it a lot more straightforward, which is great. The good news as well is you can now utilise your loft. That still falls under permitted development, so you've got a number of things. The thing to say about a lot of this is it does depend on where you live. So if you're in a conservation area or a historic area, or grade 2 listed, for example, you are going to struggle to get into permitted development. So do always check that before you start sort of bowling forwards, because otherwise you could get caught out. So I think that's a really important thing to say at this stage. Make sure your house is compliant with that. So in terms of what you can do in your loft, this is obviously again subject if somebody else has messed around with it before or changed it. You can get 40 cubic metres on terrace and then 50 on detached or semi, which is a lot of space. A couple of things around the loft, you've got to keep essentially the existing plane with the front elevation. You can't go higher than the existing roof. You must use similar materials, which makes sense. You can't start adding in verandas, balconies or raised platforms. If you do have side-facing windows, they've got to be obscure glazing. Now, of course, you can do more than this, but that would mean if you tip into those, you are going to have to go through the planning process. So all of this just means you can get this without the need for planning. So it is quite important. I think lastly, and this is super critical, really, you have to just make sure that this is just some absolute headline facts. If you're at the stage where you're thinking of doing some work, take some professional advice, get an architect round or get somebody who knows absolutely the nth degree of the law so you're not going to fall foul and get caught out. Most importantly though, before you do anything, go and speak to your neighbours. It's so important that you get them on side, because at the end of the day, I'm sure, put yourself in your position. If they decide to whack a great big extension at the back without telling you, I think, you know, none of us would be particularly pleased. So it goes a long way just to sort of have a bit of a coffee and a chat, just to tell them what you're thinking of doing to get them on side. And you never know, strange things have happened off the back of this. Often we found in the past that people have then decided to do an extension at the same time, therefore because they've got the builder on site they actually get a better price. So it's worth having these conversations, but definitely do it before you start breaking ground, because you'll save yourself a big headache towards the end. You still have to make sure that the work complies with builder regs, and that's so important, and particularly get it signed off, because if you don't get it signed off, you are going to struggle to sell it when it goes through the solicitors. So it's super important. Don't just feel that you can now throw it up. You still have to comply with the appropriate building regulations and still make sure you get it signed off. It's super critical that you do that, otherwise you are going to essentially create yourself a bit of a problem going forwards. So if you've got any queries on that, or you'd like to just discuss general extensions and things you might be doing, feel free, get in touch.
That was a really interesting segment. Do you think, though, there is something that people tend to make as a bit of a common error when they're looking at extending properties? Is there a bit of an ongoing pattern?
Yeah, I think the key one is probably they don't think enough about balance, and by that I mean that often people do ground floor extensions and then perhaps not understand the repercussions that can have to the balance of the house, so that you have a bottom heavy house which can influence have a negative impact on saleability. So if you look at townhouses, a good example, they've got very big bedrooms, tiny little downstairs spaces, which is often why people put conservatories on to balance it. So I think if there's a common mistake that people make is they perhaps don't think that through enough. And also,
so you do really need to see the whole bigger picture.
Yeah, I think it's about looking at everything. So it's both your downstairs space, your upstairs space, but also your garden space. So obviously what you don't want to do is then, if you've already got a small garden, if you put a ground floor extension on, obviously that's going to then shorten that even further. And so again, balance is probably the best way to describe it. It's just trying to get all the space to complement each other so it all knits together. And
it still has that flow as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, really important.
Okay, now we're going to move into save a space for your diary. So my favourite event that we've got coming up, which will actually be happening next Saturday, which is the 7th, is the Topiary Gin Festival at Billesley Manor. Billesley Manor is a wonderful setting. It's a beautiful medieval manor house. You've got the Topiary Gardens, which is a lovely setting. You do need to buy your tickets in advance, so go onto the website, either Billesley Manor or Topiary Gin, to reserve your tickets in advance. With your ticket, you will get a tasting goblet, you'll get tasting notes, so that then you can visit all of the local gin distillers and try their different gins and compare them. There'll also be chefs who will be serving sort of food that will sort of complement each gin, so that's going to be quite specific. And there'll also be live music as well, so it's going to be a really good event.
Cracker.
If you do book your tickets early, you will also get a discount as well, so that's something definitely to look forward to.
Yeah, that sounds great. Are you going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild horses won't keep you away, will they?
Surprise,
Bit of
surprise.
gin, yes, indeed. Well, that concludes episode 6. Remember to live, love and invest. And just one more thing to say. Happy Christmas.